Thank you. I love you. Thank you. Have you heard the birds singing today? I ask you, how many graduations does nature send singing emissaries to? It is an extraordinary gift, a real treasure, if we recognize it, if we stop and listen. At last, I've learned to listen to you, my students. Many of you have urged me to be myself up here today, encouraging me to speak from my heart. Several of you have expressed concern that in the pomp and circumstance of this moment, I might suddenly become, quote, too professorial. You have said to me, please, just tell us a story. So come on into our last Skidmore classroom. Pull in a little closer. It's a simple case we'll be analyzing today. A case of trust and love and vulnerability, of growth and change and fear, of courage and creativity and compassion. A story about touching and being touched. A story about making choices and sustaining commitment. A story of beginnings and endings and new beginnings. It's a story about following your bliss, learning to trust yourself. It's a story many of you asked me to tell. It's the story of why I'm standing up here today. And why am I here today? Why am I up here as your chosen storyteller? What monetary compensation, what bankable bonus let me finish. I've only got 7 minutes. What monetary compensation, what bankable bonus could be equal to this honor, this level of fulfillment, this height of recognition? What path brought us together in this celebration, and what lessons along that path might be relevant as we each now muster our courage, define our purpose, and outfit ourselves for the uncertainties, the challenges, and the rewards that await us right outside this amphitheater. Well, gather in now and let me tell you the story. The story begins 9 years ago when I called Skidmore and asked if there were any openings for faculty in the business department. Now let me be honest, I didn't have some carefully crafted career objective that said I wanted to become a college professor. And let me be even more honest, I didn't know the vaguest thing about teaching. So why did I call Skidmore? After a decade of fast-tracking in the corporate, entrepreneurial, and political worlds, why did I send my resume to Eric Weller instead of to Lee Iacocca or Carl Icahn? I know why. I listened to my inner voice. I had to listen very, very hard because it wasn't used to being heard. It wasn't screaming out at me like a Joan of Arc kind of inner voice. It sort of whispered, and it reminded me that what I wanted to do was to be fully present, to be a mother to my young son. Teaching, I thought, would be the perfect job for a single parent with weekends and summers and Christmases off, and class schedules that could be made to coincide with elementary school hours. Because what I wanted to do was to be a mother. That was where my heart was. That was where my sense of purpose lay. That was where I could touch my integrity. I didn't want to hire someone else to be with my son so I could go make a fortune on Wall Street. I wanted to experience the fortune of being a mother. That's why I called Skidmore. Start to hear him, aren't you? And yes, there were times during those first years when my $18,000 a year salary did not quite cover expenses, and I wondered what in the world I was doing here. There were times when my own business school professors and many of my business colleagues noted their disappointment, even disapproval of what some termed my career cop-out. They said they had expected me to turn the world upside down, not fly to Saratoga. Some of my feminist feminist classmates thought me counter-revolutionary, taking a job in the nurturing sector while being a mother. It was almost as if I single-handedly was going to turn the feminist movement back a decade. And even my dear, wonderful father, would that he could be with me today, who himself had been a teacher his whole life, even he quietly but assuredly showed his concern that somehow my life had stopped. But this was my decision, not theirs. At the time, I did not think it particularly a courageous decision. In fact, I thought it was a bit selfish. After all, it's what I wanted to do. 3 years after I joined Skidmore faculty, the great mythologist Joseph Campbell came to campus to give the Francis Stelloff lecture, and he put a label on my process. He called it following your bliss. And he seemed to think the process was both creative and courageous. To quiet oneself long enough to hear your inner voice, to know oneself well enough to trust your little voice, to experience the harmony and then embark with integrity on one's personal heroic path. According to Joseph Campbell, we are each called to take this heroic journey. Though some lives are so noisy that the call is never heard, or if heard, it is disregarded as outside of the linear resume path routed by the rational mind. There are indeed dragons out there and in here for each hero to slay, and a self beyond ego for each hero to know. And then there's the essential coming back from our journey with our own creative contributions to the world. And the prize? Joseph Campbell says that if the hero listens to his call and fulfills his quest, he will experience abundance and be rewarded with all of life's treasures. I can imagine that some of you are asking if this man Campbell was giving career counseling advice or telling fairy tales. I can hear you saying to yourself that this is mere mythology. It can't actually work. I can't do just what I want to do. There are no jobs doing what I want to do. And if there were, they surely wouldn't pay anything. I can't afford to follow my bliss. I know, maybe I'll really work hard at something now, and then later, when I'm financially secure, I'll follow my bliss. Anyway, maybe I don't even know what my bliss is. I've never heard an inner voice, and besides, I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't know the answers to those kinds of concerns. I can only tell you my story. What happened when I followed my bliss? Did I experience abundance? Did I get rich? What are the treasures? Last week I received a telephone call from Business Week. It seems they're doing a 20th reunion story on the Harvard Business School class of 1970, and they wanted to find out how far up the success ladder each of us had climbed. The young rookie reporter said to me that she had been told she had to locate me, because surely the woman who had been the first woman to integrate the Harvard dormitories and the first woman to storm the fortresses of the all-male Harvard clubs, surely she, if anyone, would be at the top of corporate America. Surely she would be at the top of corporate America, the epitome of success. And then she kind of sheepishly asked, "What are you doing in Saratoga Springs?" Well, proudly, I told her I would be commencing today with the class of 1990 from Skidmore College. And then I gave her a real story scoop. I told her I might well be the richest person in my Harvard Business School class. Now, mind you, that is no small accomplishment when you consider that the first question on our reunion questionnaire was, "What is your net worth?" But I really believe that I may well be the richest person in the Harvard Business School class of 1970. And without getting into a ponderous philosophical discussion of net worth versus self-worth and intrinsic versus extrinsic values, let me give you a quick accounting of my riches, the treasures from my journey. My first treasure, without question, is my son, the reason I sent my resume to Skidmore in the first place. There is no trade-off I would have made for the thrill of watching his first soccer goal go in, scored one fall after afternoon at 4:30. Where would I have been? What unmemorable business meeting might I have been conducting had I not chosen to stop, to mother, and to teach? For me, there is simply no price that could be put on the beauty of having touched his life. There is no trade-off, no economic opportunity cost could be considered, much less calculated. Being present during my parenthood is the treasure that makes me rich beyond compare. But I have to admit, bliss or no bliss, as a single parent, I did hold one regret. I had always wanted to have a huge family, lots and lots of children. And as the probability of that began to slip away, I found myself harboring some resentment that life was unfair. It had not given me what I wanted. It had somehow cheated me. And since resentment tends to obscure one's vision, I almost didn't notice that in following my bliss, I had gotten my wish. I suddenly had lots and lots of children. They were in my classrooms, in my offices, in my living room, everywhere. My students. You are my immeasurable and boundless treasure. So that little inner guide had granted me exactly what I wished for, a great big family, though at first I didn't recognize it in its non-nuclear form. Sometimes the real challenge is to recognize one's treasures, for the hero's journey may afford unanticipated definitions of richness and unfamiliar forms of abundance. As I touched each of you and watched you grow, as I offered you love and found it reflected back, I wonder if perhaps I might not also have accomplished exactly what my business school professors had predicted. Perhaps I had turned the world upside down, one student at a time. My third treasure is the most personal. While I was desperately searching for the formula on how to teach, I discovered that the answer lay in learning how to learn. And at that moment, I found the teacher within myself. In my Skidmore classrooms, I learned how to learn, a lesson I had somehow missed at both Vassar and Harvard. And I found it to be an extraordinary, self-replenishing treasure. Once I discovered that the only true teacher is within each of us, I stopped struggling to become a teacher of others. I could finally redirect my energies toward awakening the teacher within each of my students. Once I found the teacher within myself, and my students found the teachers within themselves, we could be open to learning from all of life's lessons. We could learn from our acceptances and our supporters and our successes, or we could equally well, if not better, learn from our rejections, our adversaries, and our failures. Finally, we could see our mistakes as an essential part of the process. For after all, how can anyone learn from a mistake he didn't make? Once learning becomes your goal, lessons are sought out. Failures become rich opportunities, while obstacles become boisterous guides that you might be in the wrong direction. I am told I did not just learn how to teach, but I did not just learn how to learn, but that I also learned how to teach. I'm told that there was sometimes magic in my classrooms. And indeed, sometimes I enjoyed teaching so much that I didn't know I was working. In that lecture back in 1984, Joseph Campbell had told us that this could happen if you followed your bliss. When I taught, the lines between work and play and life disappeared. Others may perceive it to have been magical, but in fact, it's just one of the gifts of the hero's journey. However, to this day, I remain very uneasy with the label teacher. I know that I have created environments in which people learn, and I know I've helped people see better what is already within them. Maybe I've helped some even learn how to learn, but I don't think I ever taught anyone anything. George Bernard Shaw captured my thoughts best when he said, "I am not a teacher, but a fellow traveler, of whom you have asked the way." Thank you for asking me the way. Your questions have given meaning to my travels. But as you know, all good stories have a beginning and a middle and an end. And it is over time for this one to end so that you can take your transformative walk across this stage and begin your hero's journey. But before the story ends, it occurs to me that as your fellow traveler and as a classic mother, I would like to add a few cautionary words before sending you off on your journey. First, I want to remind you that when you're seeking meaning in stories, be they cosmic mythologies or personal journeys, please follow the connotation, not the denotation of the words. Each of you may not and should not, and maybe even cannot, become mothers or college professors. That was my bliss, my fortune. But each one of you has your own personal mythology to decipher, your own inner voice to hear. Second, I hope I didn't make the path sound magically smooth. That journey isn't easy. It's filled with choices and heroic challenges. That's why you need all the creativity and all the courage you can get. That's why you need a sense of humor and a sense of perspective. The hero sometimes feels alone and rejected. The hero sometimes feels confusion and pain. And yes, the hero sometimes feels scared. When I entered my first Skidmore classroom, I found, somewhat to my surprise, that I was scared to death. The task of teaching called for a new form of courage, not the assertive courage of the businesswoman warrior, but the compassionate courage of a different archetype. At first, I didn't know what to do with my classroom fear. I thought every student could see right through me. I felt I was a fraud. But fear, I soon discovered, was part of the developmental process. I needed to embrace it and recognize it for the opportunity that it is. The gift that comes from confronting one's fear is courage. The hero recognizes fear as an invitation to grow. In the classroom, I recognized in your faces the reflection of my own fears. Each of you, as freshmen and as seniors, let down your masks of pseudo-confidence and showed me you too were really scared. And together we tamed our dragon fear. We befriended him and we used his energy to fuel our growth and our learning. And yes, I'm scared again today as I walk across into the next chapter of my journey. Will I choose the right direction? Will I hear my little voice accurately? What lessons are still mine to learn? Will I have the courage to make hard choices and firm commitments? Of course I'm scared. By definition, the hero's journey is filled with challenge and filled with fear, filled with courage, and filled with learning. If any of you are thinking that you're not a hero, or not even a hero in the making, I want you to know you are wrong. The hero's path is not just for professors and other immortals. In fact, you are already on the heroic path. Each of us fallible human beings has the choice to take the journey, and I know that you've already made the choice. The fact that you elected me to be up on this stage telling you this story today is evidence that you have the courage and the vision for the journey. For you saw that you could learn from an anomaly. You didn't just throw out the anomaly because it didn't fit the cultural paradigm. Instead, you questioned the accuracy of the paradigm. I believe that creating new paradigms will be the heroic challenge of the 21st century. My final motherly caution is that there isn't a permanently peaceful haven on the heroic path. Just when you start to feel comfortable, just when you get really good at what you're doing, so good you're no longer scared, it's probably time to move on to new challenges and new learnings. On the hero's path, there are many beginnings, many endings, and much letting go. Sometimes we just intuitively know the time for the the next challenge has come. Sometimes the world has to tell us. Sometimes we need a little push. It is, after all, a birthing process. For each of us, that time is here. We are feeling very, very sad and very, very excited at this paradoxical moment. But as I said, all good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. When the story is really, really good, when it has touched us and brought meaning into our lives, we don't want to finish the book. Today, toward the end, we start reading very, very slowly, clinging to the characters and relishing each page, because we know the sense of emptiness and aloneness that can come when finally and inevitably we close down the back cover. It is in that emptiness that we appreciate the fullness the story has brought us. And it is in that emptiness that we gain the energy to choose our next book. The book doesn't, in fact, die. Its words are more alive because you read them. The story doesn't disappear. You can open it up again anytime and touch the warmth of those familiar passages. Skidmore, for us, has been such a meaningful book. So I will close the cover, wish you much courage, wish you much love, and ask you up on the stage for your heroic journey.